So now we're going to take a quick look at our component test, and we're going to review in detail what you get for your component test section. We're going to pick active wheel speed sensors for this particular demonstration. Active wheel speed sensors are a moderately new development. They give significant benefits over the old style analog or signal generator systems. That the active wheel speed sensor generates a voltage from very low or 0 RPM, so they're very sensitive and accurate. Don't rely on speed of rotation for the output. So our component test window is made up of 4 key areas. The key areas are split into component information. This is something you should know if you've never seen one of these before. The idea is you come in here, have a quick look through, and in the component information window we list the abbreviations. We give an illustration of the component, so a photograph of the component, its shape, and if there's a multi-plug or wiring, that's also shown. And as we scroll through, we get description and operation. So this is how the sensor works and what its main function is. And then following that, we have failure mode and effect management. So what happens if this component or device stops functioning? And this is aimed at giving you an idea if the symptom you've got on the vehicle could be related to the component that you're now looking at. Also, we have location in this, so where is it? So you can go to find it to make a measurement. So once you've gone through the component information page, then the idea is that you come across to the pre-test information. Pre-test information arms you with what you need to know about testing that component shortly before you're going to test it. Firstly, we give you a picture of the component, multi-plug, and the pin layout. Then we list the generic diagnostic trouble codes, and the trouble codes listed here enable you to find this component test. Should you enter the software, enter a search item, put a trouble code in, it will take you to the page that you need for performing that component test. It also proves as a very interesting double check that the component diagnostic trouble codes, we click on a component trouble code, we've installed all of the component trouble code definitions. So if your scan tool is coming up with maybe an undefined code, it's a great way of checking what that code means. If we scroll down, this is another thing that's got some really strong reviews from our customers who've been using the software. It's MasterTech Notes. Now the idea behind MasterTech Notes is that these enable you to have background information, also have information that stops you falling into common diagnostic pitfalls, and essentially these are notes that if you had access to a master technician who had experience of the system and you're able to call him or speak to him, what sort of stuff would he tell you about this sensor to enable you to make a quick and accurate diagnosis. And so the information contained here is real world sort of test information about that component. Once we go through pre-test information, you're now in a position where you might want to make a test. So the next logical sequence here is test information. And here the key headings are test conditions. How should I test it? Test procedures and settings. Okay, what do I need to set my tool, be that a multimeter, a scan tool, or an oscilloscope, to get the best possible signal? Then we talk about the location. Is it best to test it at the ECU or at the sensor? And this will depend obviously on the type of component that you're measuring. And then we give you a connection illustration using whichever method you're choosing to use. Here we can apply the current clamp, it's shown here, method 2, and method 1 is showing us with the scope and the multimeter. The scope and the multimeter test and measurement give you 2 coloured leads depending on where you're checking, so this is described more fully in the text. And so test information, now you're ready to go. So at this stage you should be getting a signal or some measurement into the tool that you're using, and that then is when we go to test results. So the test results are split into the test results, what you're expecting. If you're using an oscilloscope, it gives you the option to have a sample of the oscilloscope waveform that you're looking at. But more powerfully, if you're using the Pico product, we can click on this load PS data, and the PS data will fire up the Pico scope, and it will set for you the time scales, any triggers, and also the voltage level. So this is a sort of preset, defined setting for Pico. We've also then, if you're using an alternate scope, given you a picture of the oscilloscope waveform and listing there obviously the 2 signals that we're measuring and a description. And then down below we have, if you're using a multimeter, if you're using a scan tool, And then what happens if you don't get what you were looking for? So some idea of corrective action or some next steps or something you need to do to verify whether that's the component at fault, the wiring, etc. One other feature that we've got here is in the library, and there's a message that says click image to open the library. So if I click that image, the software will take me to the library, and inside the library then we've got a comparison waveform for active wheel speed sensors. And this is playing through a sequence of 5 screens. In each of the screens is a definition at the bottom of the page, and we're showing you sample waveforms from a number of different vehicles. If you wanted to pause those, obviously you can pause the waveform, you can play backwards through the screen to find the one that you're interested in, or you can have them running through in a sequence. This is then showing the waveform output. We can see the 12 volts in blue, or the signal supply, and on there we've got this very small waveform, and then down below we've got the signal waveform. So I play that for a second, you'll see it scroll through and show several other conditions or measurements from that type of component. In addition to this, we've got then connection notes. These are a more detailed view about how to test and measure this component, with photographs of how to apply the components, and at the bottom of the screen you've got your ability to make technician's notes on that particular reference waveform. To get back to where we were, again the back button will navigate us back to our component test sheet, and the key focus behind this component test sheet is that you can make a quick and accurate diagnosis on any of the sensors or actuators that are covered in our diagnostic test sheet.